Yeah, so we should be live. Yay! I think we're live. OBS says we're live. There we go.
I
Got the
do
link.
see it.
Sending it now. I think we're live. OBS says Hi, hello everyone, and welcome to my channel, Hisame Artwork. Let's test again the sound.
Hi,
hello everyone, and yeah, so I'm always stressed about the sound because I've had frequently technical issues. So, I'm Hisame, your host. I'm a graphic artist. I am currently working on the Ghibli town mod, which is a Stardew Valley mod that adds like a whole new town. To the Stardew Valley universe, let's say, and it is Ghibli themed. So, for those of you that don't know, Studio Ghibli is a Japanese animation studio that has done a lot of awesome cartoons. I'm sure even if you've never heard of Studio Ghibli, you've heard of a Totoro, um, which is their mascot. And today I have a special treat for you guys. I'm joined by Will from Terraforma. He is a geologist, and today we're going to talk about the minerals in Stardew Valley, because not all of them are real, and also for potential minerals for our Ghibli Town Museum. So, Will, want to say something about yourself?
Yeah, hello there. So I'm Will, as Hisame said, and I am more than a little bit of a rock enthusiast. Um, I've worked in a few.
Oh, you're cutting off now. You were just fine before. I can't hear you anymore. Hello? Horrible timing. Hello? Can you still hear me? Will? Nope. Seems we've lost Will, which is very unfortunate because he was just fine a few minutes ago. Here is his channel. We've had some very wonderful conversations previously on Discord about minerals, possible um, real life applications, or like what could fantasy and pop culture minerals could be in reality. Yeah, welcome back. This is just, horrible luck. It sometimes happens that people just completely drop. So I'm going
Uh,
to. Hello, you're back?
yeah, my internet cut out. That was weird. I'm good now.
Horrible luck. So you cut off just when you started talking. So you'll have to, whatever you said, um, say it again.
All right. As I said before, by Hisame, I'm Will, and I'm starting a channel on YouTube called Terra Firma, in which I will be teaching earth science topics from the common to the university level. So, for people who want to learn more about rocks but really can't afford to get a college education, uh, I'm hoping, just teach hobbyists a few things that I have learned in my time. And I'm excited to be here and just to talk about rocks because it's all I do.
Awesome. Yes, I'm very enthusiastic about rocks as well. Not just the pretty ones, because as some of you might know, I do write books for kids and teenagers, and I do a lot of world building. So I often think about the aspects of like the geology, like the what plants can grow, and of course, all of these things are tied into. So I'm like extra interested in the topic. And so while I'm gonna work here on Ghibli Town, I'm gonna make some more maps that are gonna connect, and we'll finally be able to do the quest to enter Ghibli Town and post a beta version on Nexus Mods finally. For those of you that don't know, Nexus Mods is kind of like a place where you can post your mods, and that is where we post all of our mods. And we don't post them anywhere else because it's pretty safe on Nexus, viruses and things like that. So that's where you'll be able to find it. So I'm gonna work here on the screen, and Will tell us about the minerals in StardewValley, which are real, which aren't, and just some fun things about them. So Will, please take it away.
All right then. I mean, I guess we could start with the common stuff. Everyone knows about who's played Stardew Valley has seen the quartz that is everywhere in the mines.
Mm-hmm.
You can find out pretty much all the levels, and it's just kind of there. And the game likes to describe the quartz as being a common mineral in caves and mines. And that's actually rather accurate. Quartz is what you could call um, a commonly associated mineral. So when a mineral is associated with something, it's an indicator. Like if you find quartz, that's important for finding, say, gold, because
Oh,
quartz is often a mineral that occurs with gold, but it also indicates the presence of other minerals like uh, copper bearing minerals and iron bearing minerals. It's just wherever there's quartz, there tends to be the stuff you want.
interesting.
So, um, the shape they have in the game as well is very accurate. Honestly, in general, with the minerals in the game, a lot of them are surprisingly accurate, but there's a few that aren't, obviously. Um, if you want, I could just checklist through all the minerals. I'm not sure. Uh, is that what you would like to hear?
No. I mean, I think definitely the ones that aren't real would be kind of interesting to know which ones are fake, because it's a common question I get asked about More New Fish. So I am one of the authors of the More New Fish mod. Trent is the other modder. He did the coding, I did the art, and I wanted to include fantasy fish from pop culture, so like from Futurama and The Simpsons, because I'm a fan of those shows. Also from Avatar: The Last Airbender, I included some fish. So I can definitely understand why Concerned Ape put some fantasy rocks there. So maybe you can tell us a bit about those, and then we can circle back to kind of like our favorite rocks. For example, Opal is mine, and it is in the Stardew Valley game. So you can start, I guess, with the lemon rock from Stardew Valley. Oops, I think, did we lose Will again? Are you still with us? Okay, he's having some technical difficulties, everyone, so he'll be back right in a jiffy. He has to restart his modem. Yep, it always works fine until you have to something important to do, like a live stream when other people are watching. That's kind of the luck of the streamer. So, like I was saying, there are some minerals that aren't real in Stardew Valley. One of them is like the lemon stone. I don't remember uh, by heart the ones that are fake. Will has the list. And right here, I'm kind of making like a little corner for the beach. This is like another side beach from the main one. It's kind of like a little area where I'll be able to put some other characters if need be. If not, I'll leave it empty, but there's just so many characters I want to add to Ghibli Town that I kind of don't have room for everybody. So I'm gonna be adding some more maps to make things interesting.
Hopefully, hopefully.
Hey, welcome back.
Oh dear. All right.
How, Andrei, how would we translate to English efectul demonstrației? Demonstration effect, like it's in English, right? The idea that it works fine until you have to show somebody something.
Right. Was working great. Peen looks good, and all of a sudden, nope. Haha. Just messing with you.
You have
Ruined.
gremlins in your modem, maybe.
I don't know. I don't know, but it's fine. It's fine. It's connected now. So.
So I was saying, I don't know where you dropped off. I was recommending
Oh,
like you
yeah.
tell us more about the fake or the fantasy minerals in Stardew Valley. And I was
Ah,
giving an
yeah.
example of the lemon stone for the dwarves.
Yes, now that's a pretty funny one. When I was looking at the minerals before this video and getting familiar with them, I read how the game's description says some claim the powdered crystal is a dwarvish delicacy, and I'm just thinking, of course, dwarves would eat rocks. That makes sense. Um,
I thought it
what?
was pretty cute too.
Yeah, it's
Like they're not classical Tolkienian dwarves. They're like different kinds of dwarves. I don't know
yeah,
what you
it's a
would
little
compare them
unclear.
with in like Scandinavian culture. You said one of your ancestors was Swedish. Like, do you
Yeah.
see any overlap there? Like, do you have any like trolls or dwarves that eat rocks in your culture?
Um, I mean, in that culture, the dwarves were master craftsmen, so they didn't really eat the rocks, so to speak.
In Tolkien
They also were
stories,
cheap.
no, but like
Yeah,
you have in Elsa with the Frozen stories, you have like those rock troll
the
things.
rock trolls.
Do you think maybe they eat rocks?
Sure, I mean, and they gotta eat something. Might as well, and you are what you eat. So if they want to be rocks, I guess they'll eat rocks.
What other minerals do you want to tell us about?
Sure. We can talk about some of the ones that are um, either made up or inaccurate. That's fine. So, like the Earth crystal,
Mm-hmm.
that's there's no actual mineral or gem called an Earth crystal, but it is described in the game as being resinous and by the surface, which sounds a lot like amber to me.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I was kind of sad we didn't have amber in Pelican Town. I was like, why not? You have coal.
yeah. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say their crystal is amber and could be based on the description, even though its appearance is a bit weird.
Mm-hmm.
The frozen tears are obviously made up, since they're supposed to be the frozen tears of a Yeti.
Oh,
Those
really?
are.
I don't
Mhm.
think I remember reading. Can you read us the description?
Yeah, sure. Let's see here. I have it in a different tab. Here we go. Okay, so the description in game says it's a crystal fabled to be the frozen tears of a yeti. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, and it's a pretty cool backstory. Maybe that explains why Sebastian loves it so much, or he's just edgy. Who knows?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny character in my opinion. I love the all the characters in Stardew Valley kind of started to grow on me. At the beginning, I was like, "Oh, you're boring. I'm not gonna bother with you." But you know, as time went by, I was like, "Oh, interesting backstory, and not as bad as I thought you were gonna be." What
Makes sense.
other minerals are fantasy in Stardew Valley?
Well, I mean, there's the fire quartz,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a cool notion, and but there's no quartz that just glows red like the game's version of fire quartz.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
There's quartz that is pink, right?
yes, you can have like rose quartz, which is a common variety. So the thing with the varieties of quartz, uh, such as rose quartz, citrine, amethyst, all
Citrine is
those,
a version of quartz.
yes, it is.
Ah, cool.
So they're all, from a geologist perspective, they're all just quartz with impurities.
Yeah.
There's they're not different minerals, but we consider them different minerals because the gem industry and
Mm-hmm.
gemologists
Mm-hmm.
they consider them that, and so do lapidary artists. So a lot
Bedary
of
artists? What are those?
lapidary artists, yeah,
What? I didn't hear the word.
lapidary.
Lapidary. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So a lot of names are trade names
Mm-hmm.
that have been that are also the common use names.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in this case, if you looked hard enough, you could probably find someone selling something called fire quartz. Because they're like, well, it looks like there's fire in it.
Mm-hmm.
You might find some quartz that's iridescent on the inside because of fractures.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it reminds someone of fire opal. Because
Mm-hmm.
fire opal is said to have fire in it. Uh, the play of colors is referred to as fire. So maybe if you had a quartz that was particularly iridescent, maybe that would be fire quartz. But normally it's not a real thing.
Mm-hmm. Don't you find it absolutely irritating? I mean, it is very irritating for me when I see pink Himalayan salt at the supermarket and it says, "Oh, pure salt." I'm like, "No, it's not pure at all. That's why it's pink." Like, how do you feel about these things?
Yeah, a person in my Rock County group just recently posted a funny meme on that, and that you'll see containers of salt at the supermarket that
Mm-hmm.
say, the Himalayan salt, and it's 150 million years old, and then it has a best by date on
I
it.
mean, yeah, but that's like legislation restrictions. You have to put one, so it's like not really the seller's fault for
Yeah.
that one, but
Oh yeah. It's all
lying
about the packaging.
lying about it being organic or pure, like
Yes.
that I take issue. The FDA in your case, because you're in the U.S., so you have the
Yes.
FDA. Like that's not the FDA's fault.
No. No. And when you're buying salt, salt is table. You could say table salt is the most pure version of salt.
Mhm.
The reason other salts taste different, like Himalayan sea salt or Dead Sea salt or wherever it's from, is impurities.
Mhm.
So it's less pure than just normal table salt.
For sure, yeah. It's still hilarious, and it's annoying for me. I'm like,
Oh yeah, definitely.
So, like I was saying previously, opal is my favorite mineral. I think it's very pretty. Can you tell us about it? It is in the for the Stardew Valley Museum. You can find it in Pelican Town.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's uh, the opal they have in Stardew Valley is uh, pretty accurate. You know, it's got a little bit of color, but it's mostly just kind of clear or blue.
Mm-hmm.
And opal, as I said earlier, has this thing people like to call the fire in it. And the more fire an opal has, it's considered to be a better quality opal. You know, most of the cheap stuff out there, you're going to see a little bit of color play, but not too much. Um, Structure wise, opal is basically the same thing as chalcedony, which is a variety of quartz,
Mm-hmm.
but the difference is it has water in its structure. And sometimes, because of the water in the structure, soaking some opal can give it more color for a while because the opal can slowly dehydrate over time.
Oh, I did not know that. And it kind of becomes more dull, or
Yeah, it loses a bit of the color
fascinating.
because the water is trapped in the structure, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not completely trapped.
And if you put
And
it in a bowl of water, does it make it better?
yeah, if you just leave it in water for a while, it'll give it a bit of a color boost.
Oh,
At
cool.
the same time, if you heat up opal, it will lose the water in the structure. And if you heat it up quickly enough, the water in the structure will turn to steam and the opal will shatter.
Oh.
So it's a bit of an issue for people who want to put opal in like glass if they want to encase it in glass because all that molten glass heats the opal and causes it to explode.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Uh, YouTuber Nick Uhas was doing a video where he was trying to stabilize opal or try and encase it
Mm-hmm.
in like glass or acrylic and stuff like that. He had a problem with it. It just kept popping when you tried to do that because of the heat.
Mm-hmm.
But opal's not the only mineral that does that.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have what's called an anhydro inclusion in quartz and amethyst.
Mm-hmm.
And I have heard stories from my friend Brian Major, the crystal collector on YouTube. He was telling me about how he went and collected these big, gorgeous amethyst crystals that had anhydro inclusions, which are little bubbles filled with water.
Mm-hmm.
And he left them in his car because, you know, he had to film his video. And the sunlight in the combined with the temperature of the car caused the water inside the bubbles to turn to steam, and his amethyst crystals exploded.
Oh,
So
wow. Waste. Because, like, those were, like, how many bajillions of years old?
they were probably 100 plus million years old. And here's the thing, he had some really big ones, like fist sized scepters of amethyst. And they were really nice and they just exploded. So now he's very cautious when he gets any kind of quartz with the water inclusion.
Because, like, what's the potential research value that was lost in that? Like, is it something to cry about?
No, no. I mean, amethyst, everyone loves it, but it's also very common. Quartz
Mm-hmm.
is very, very common. It's the, and when it comes to continental crust, most continental crust, the most common mineral is quartz,
Mm-hmm.
and in all of its forms. So that includes crystalline quartz, but also the microcrystalline varieties, chert and chalcedony and agate and all those. Those are all quartz as well, but they're what are referred to as microcrystalline or fibrous in structure. Uh, a lot of minerals are just varieties of quartz.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very flexible and common substance. But
And it
in
has some.
oceanic,
Mm-hmm.
hmm,
I wanted to ask about like what are the interesting properties of quartz because I think you mentioned like bioluminescence. No, when you hit it, it releases light or something like that.
yeah, so it has something called tribioluminescence, which is a bit of a mouthful.
Can you
But
type it in the chat for people to
sure,
like if they want to Google more of it, they can just copy
sure.
paste from the chat. Like whenever there's like a fancy sciencey word, I would greatly appreciate it if you just posted how it's supposed to be spelled, because uh, the English language is neither phonetic or even phonetically consistent. It's just a nightmare. So it's hard to listen to an English person what words they're saying and then being able to guess how it's spelled and
Yeah, of
Google
course.
it. Thank you. Triboluminescence.
Yes.
And
So what happens with that is because the crystal structure, kinetic energy is converted into energy in the form of photons, and light is emitted from it. And there's several uses for that. Historically speaking, Native Americans actually would put quartz crystals in animal bladders to make rattles, and they would shake the rattles, and it would make light.
oh,
I
that's
mean, it
so
was
cool.
yeah, and was for ceremonial purposes, and it make a whole lot of light, but it was cool and it was a kind of spirit rattle of sorts. But what we use quartz for, modern days, that property is construction. So in pitch black foundations under like skyscrapers and stuff, they will put quartz into the cement pillars and they'll set up light sensitive cameras down there.
Hmm.
And if they see it flash, they know that the structure has been damaged.
Oh, that's cool.
So
I had no
it's a
idea.
useful property.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Really fun too. I mean, without the fact that a building's gonna fall on your head. Do you have like any link to the Native American rattle you just mentioned?
Um, let's see. Here, it's called a Ute ceremonial rattle. And here's a one that's got one, found one on Pinterest.
Thank you. What tribe do you have in Utah? Cause like when I lived in Michigan, we had the Chippewas.
The dominant tribe is Utes, the Ute Indians, but
Ah, interesting.
we also had the Navajo and the
Mm-hmm.
Paiute
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
I've heard of those.
the Anasazi.
Yeah, I heard of those too. So like Utah is named after the Utes, or is just a combination?
That is exactly what it's named after. It was not necessarily respectfully named after them.
Uh huh.
They weren't consulted or anything.
What other states are named after native peoples? I think it was what ah, the name escapes me. Do you know?
That's a good question. I don't know if any of the others are.
I've heard some rumors that Massachusetts was named after them or something. I don't know how true that is.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I can't say for certain because geography.
Yeah, it's not
The
your area of expertise, maybe.
I
Like
mean,
history, yeah.
yeah, I know the geologic side of
Yeah, I'll
geography.
ask you about rocks.
It's okay.
It was just a personal curiosity. Yeah, so what other rocks do you find interesting and, sorry, minerals, and they're in the Stardew Valley Museum as a quest item?
Of course, something people don't know. So Emerald and Aquamarine, they're both in Stardew Valley.
Mhm.
And looking at their appearances, how the game represents them, you wouldn't think that they're actually the same mineral. Emerald and aquamarine are varieties of beryl, the mineral beryl.
Mhm. Mhm.
And as such, the crystals have the same natural habits. They look like hexagonal cylinders is a good way to describe them. Hexagonal prism, I think, is the proper term. So they're long, usually, and fairly narrow, but people like to cut them into various shapes. So if you buy them, for like a ring or something, it probably isn't going to look like the raw shape.
Mhm.
But they also have ruby in Stardew Valley, but surprisingly, no sapphire, which I found that very
Yeah,
odd.
yeah. I thought it was odd too. Maybe he kind of stopped at some point, or he thought it was boring, or maybe he just doesn't like sapphires. It is a
Maybe.
possibility.
It's unfortunate because ruby and sapphires are also two of the same mineral.
Mhm.
They're the mineral corundum, the second hardest mineral on the most hardness scale.
Can you write the names of these things in the chat for people?
Sure, sure.
I find it very interesting how like metals oxidize in different colors. Because, for example, you have iron and blood, and you mix our blood red, more or less, and also you have apparently in chloroplasts in leaves you have a in the molecule that makes the photosynthesis thing, you have iron again, which I found very fascinating while talking to a botanist. That's uh, apparently iron can make stuff green and red, and of course there's oxidated iron that is black and so on. So I'm not at all surprised that minerals that can be from the same family and just have different colors, but we think they're very different gems, and like we attribute magical powers that are different for each, but they're actually the same thing. So
Yeah, that's a very good point. That, it's said that quartz, amethyst, citrine, all of those, they are said to have different properties, despite just all the colorful ones just being basically contaminated quartz.
yeah, I think it's a very shallow understanding of stuff, and I find it hilarious when people spend so much time memorizing these things, and it's like not even by
You
any
know,
logic consistent. It's just like random often.
the placebo effect is a very strong effect, and if it's making people happy
Mhm.
and they're not like, it's refusing cancer treatment and relying on their rocks, then I'm all for it. As long as you get proper medicine plus your placebo effect from your rocks.
Yeah, like mental health is so important, and like nowadays people are becoming more aware of like depression and things like that, which like if you're sad, you're gonna get sick easier, and then of course the stress. When often doctors are like, "We don't know what's wrong with you; it's stress." But stress can be an issue, and like they measured cortisol and stuff like that, and there's some researching linking hormones associated with stress and like health problems and so on and so forth. So yeah, the what do you call it, placebo or something else? It's a very fascinating topic of medicine, in my opinion. So, like, if you're any doctors out there listening to us, you want to join my stream and tell us. My husband is raising his hand, but like he has a PhD, but not in medicine. So like you're not valid for this topic. Yeah, you are a doctor as well. Um, Yeah, so what other minerals you wanted to like tell us about in Stardew Valley that are maybe not accurate, or like there's some mistakes that crept in.
Yeah, there's a few things like that. So one of the minerals the developer added to StardewValley, he labeled Bixite,
Mm-hmm.
which is not actually the name for the mineral. The mineral is called Bixbyite, which I will be typing. So if someone wanted to buy the mineral, they're like, hey, that's kind of cool, the black shiny cube.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you actually have to look for. I don't know why he thought it was Bixite and not Bixbyite, since Bixite isn't, it doesn't actually exist. But
Maybe,
Bixbyite's really cool because it forms
maybe,
with a,
maybe he
like, if,
copy pasted wrong. Um, so this is what the word you posted here is the correct one for the image. Now, can you link us the image for the wrong name so we know like the difference?
yeah, of course, of course. The spelling that he used is, let's just check in real quick. He put it in as Bixite, but his description's accurate. Being dark metallic minerals sought after for its cubic structure. Like, it's accurate. The model, the art for it is pretty accurate, and the description's accurate, just the name's wrong. But it's one of the coolest minerals out there, if you ask me. And it occurs with other cool minerals like topaz. And here in Utah, uh, it's almost always found attached to topaz crystals. Connection still good?
I'm waiting for the link, but it's not. Let me check. I think I need to make you an admin. Otherwise, YouTube won't let you post links. I'll post it in Discord, and I'll post it, and I'll look for the settings of how to make you an admin later,
All right.
because I don't know where to find it now. Yeah, it's very annoying. Like I keep telling YouTube, yeah, anybody can post whatever links they want, because I don't have that many people that join the chat to like have an issue with spammers.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
still, it's like YouTube policy in live streams. People can't post links unless they're moderators or something like that.
yeah, I get that. Bit of a segue based on what you're currently doing on screen.
Mm-hmm.
You know what fractals are?
Yep.
So coastlines, for whatever reason, follow the rule of fractals.
Oh,
If you look,
interesting.
if yes, they tend to form this. You can mathematically predict a coastline using fractal math, and it's kind of just really crazy that that occurs often in nature.
So you gave us a wiki link, so that's big site, but it should be named Big Spite. And can you send us the image on Wikipedia for the big size? Oh, I think I can Google for it. Let me see.
Okay.
Big site Wikipedia. Where are you? Wikipedia. It's giving me Big Spite. I can't find Big Site. Where is it? Like you said, it's a real thing.
No, a big site's not a mineral.
Ah, okay.
That was the
Sorry, I
point I was making.
misunderstood. I misunderstood you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All good. All good. That's why I was saying, the real mineral's big spyite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he's a programmer. Maybe a Big Site sounded better than Big Byte. I don't know.
I'm, I'm not too bothered by it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a fantasy game. If you want to have
Yeah.
silly, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But if people get particularly attached to a mineral in Stardew Valley, it's good to know that you can get some of them outside of Stardew Valley.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's one green one that I find very interesting how it looks. Um,
The Jamborite,
yeah, the green one, right? That's the Jamboree. It looks kind of like a star, like a. It's a pretty interesting design.
yeah, his design is a bit different than what it really looks like. It's got a acicular habit, which means it looks like needles. And I think with the star, he was trying to represent the needle crystals
Mm-hmm.
or something to that extent.
Yeah, because in
But
pixel art.
Jamborite's pretty. Yeah, Jamborite's still pretty. And the needles are pretty fragile.
Let me check Discord. Did you post it? Ah, okay. Let me Google that one.
Mm-hmm.
Jambo, right. Wikipedia. So convenient to have Wikipedia. I grew up without it.
Yeah.
Dark days. Jambo, right. Let's see. It doesn't look as interesting as the pixel art, but it's still pretty.
No. It's actually kind of just like,
Looks like a mossy rock.
yeah, hair or grass or long haired moss, things like that.
Is it cancerous? I mean, there's a danger of cancer if you breathe it in, kind of. Like, I imagine any dust or rock, you shouldn't be breathing
Um,
it in.
Honestly, most people who. It's not what's known as a.
It's not as bad as asbestos.
Well, so it's not known as an abestiform mineral. Several minerals form what is known as an abestiform habit, which is when it becomes uh, fibrous and airborne. So there's a few minerals that do that. Uh, asbestos is just a nickname for any mineral that has that kind of habit.
Hmm. And is like this rock jamborite available for purchase for like rock enthusiasts?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So if you
I mean,
wanna have this
it's
at
probably
home.
expensive. Just FYI, it's a pretty rare mineral.
Hmm. And if you want to collect this at home, like you should probably be careful to keep it in a box and not breathe it in.
Yeah. Honestly, people are at most risk breathing in things they shouldn't when they're cutting rocks or
Hmm.
busting them open because then they'll just kick up some dust. But,
Like, did they
yeah,
teach
look.
you in your classes at university, like health and safety? Because I know if you become a chemist, you have like a whole class of stuff you have to learn to like be
Uh,
careful how you handle. Is it the same for you guys?
Not particularly. I mean, they do tell us if you're handling one of the mercury or arsenic minerals, or if you're handling galena, you might want to wash your hands afterwards. But
Galena?
here's the thing. Yes, galena. That's not in Stardew Valley, but it's the main ore for lead. It's a very heavy, very
Ah.
shiny mineral.
Galena actually in Latin, I think it's chicken because we have gallina in Romanian.
That's awesome.
Does it look like an egg or what?
No, it's shiny, like it makes perfect mirrors that reflect light.
Hmm, interesting.
Uh, yeah, it is pretty interesting. I don't suppose people can drop images into chat.
Uh, in um, in YouTube, no, I have to like find the settings and make you an. Let me see. Maybe it's here. Uh, add moderator. Okay. See if you can post links now.
right. Let's see. I tried copying the image link for something. Let's see. Does that work? Yeah, that worked. So
Yay.
that's an example of Galena.
Ah,
Some
yeah.
really,
Mm-hmm.
really, really nice Galena. But
No resemblance to a chicken.
no, no. I'm not good eating either.
Yeah, at first when you said Galena, I was thinking, what's the one that's liquid at room temperature, but not mercury? Germanium? Oh,
Oh, yes.
gallium. Gallium?
Yeah, gallium is
Gallium,
that's
okay.
fun. I do like gallium.
It's pretty fun for party tricks, and I understand it's not toxic to humans.
Yes, it's not toxic to humans, but if you put gallium on aluminum, it will
Oh,
basically
yeah, yeah, yeah.
destroy it. So
It looks so cool when that happens. It's like really fun. I
it's pretty
think I
cool.
saw it on Nile Red's channel, maybe,
I
if you
mean,
know it.
people do like those videos.
Yeah, they're very attractive visually. You definitely get clicks for it. It's fun. Find it very entertaining. But what is like a mineral that you find fascinating from your um, point of view that you feel like is not getting enough attention because it's not flashy enough?
Um, well, there's a lot of minerals that are plenty flashy in their own right, but I would say feldspar. Feldspar is an extremely common mineral. It's everywhere and it can form some pretty crystals, but people will only know the fancier varieties, like Labradorite, which is a kind of feldspar.
Can
And
you
Labradorite's one of my favorite minerals.
can you put it in the link below for us to see
Sure,
it? Like
yeah, that's fine.
feldspar sounds familiar to me. Maybe if I'll see it, I'll recognize it.
One
And why
moment.
do you find it interesting?
So Labradorite has a property called Schiller, and what that means is one moment. I'm going to post a link before I continue.
Mm-hmm, sure.
Okay, here's a. Well, that's here. It's. I'm going to use an Etsy listing because it's a good example.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so it has what's called Schiller. The inside structure, it's got an outer transparent, translucent layer, and then
Ooh.
inside it has crystal growth at like kind of in the shape of corrugated cardboard, but with hills and valleys. And when light enters it, it hits those at different angles. So as you turn and you look at the labradorite from other angles, it'll flash different colors. It changes colors depending on how you hold it.
Kind of reminds me of Opal. It's really interesting how it looks.
Oh, yeah, it's really, really cool. And it's my definitely my favorite mineral. It's just it comes in lots of colors and
What other minerals do
completely part of it.
interesting things like quartz? Like, for example, you said quartz, when you hit it, it creates light. What other minerals do interesting things?
Um, there's there's a few that will like glow when you melt them down. which is a property sometimes used by geologists to identify minerals, is if they emit visible or infrared radiation when you melt them down.
Well, aren't they doing that because they're heated?
Yes.
And like,
Yeah.
why then is it special? Like, if all of them do it, because like everything emits that when it's burned, right?
Sort of. So what color, like the specific color on the spectrum, is unique to the chemical makeup of a mineral. So if you're using a light spectrometer and you melt down a mineral,
Mm-hmm.
the light emitted from the process will be unique to that mineral. It's also kind of the same idea when using uh, polarized light microscope to identify minerals via a property called birefringence. Birefringence is basically when people shine polarized light through a mineral,
Mm-hmm.
it will stretch it or shorten it or uh, and do that on different wavelengths. And you can use the birefringence of a mineral to identify it since each mineral has its own birefringence rating.
Mm-hmm.
There's dozens of ways they use light to identify minerals.
Mm-hmm. 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 Huh, interesting. I didn't know they would do that. Like, it didn't occur to me like burning stuff would be useful. I thought you'd just use the spectrometer and you
Yeah.
shine a light at it or something, and that's enough. Why
Well,
would you need to burn it? Like, why isn't a flashlight enough?
so you're going to want the idea behind things like an X-ray spectrometer is they turn the mineral into a gas because then it can pass light through the gas and see how it interacts. So usually when you're doing X-ray diffraction, uh, that destroys a bit of the sample.
Mm-hmm.
Usually just a small piece, but it's one of the most reliable ways to identify a mineral. But
Uh-huh.
I mean, this is all stuff most people don't need to do. Most people, you can just test the hardness, check the appearance, look up online what might be in the area, things like that. Most people don't care if they have a slightly special mineral.
Wouldn't it be like useful for them? Like, is it like I see sometimes hunting videos, and there's like this hillbilly looking guy, usually with a funny way of talking for some reason, and he like talks about how much money he made, and he goes somewhere and rips up the soil and gets a bunch of rocks. Usually the blue ones catch my eye because I find that in my experience blue rocks are more rare, and he like puts them in his pickup truck and like goes to sell them and makes YouTube videos out of it and stuff like that. And kind of makes it seem that, oh, you can like make a living out of this, just going around doing this, and it seems very sketchy to me.
Yeah, you can't because you can't sell minerals. So in the United States, you can't sell minerals that you collected on public land unless you
Mm.
get a commercial collection permit. And then when you have a commercial collection permit, you could only you have to follow certain guidelines, and that's only usable for national forest land. Other kinds of public land you wouldn't be able to sell from at all. So a lot of people like to illegally sell what they find,
Mhm.
and most of them know better. Some of them genuinely don't know the rules with that, but most of them know full well what they're doing is legal. They just don't care because they don't agree with the law.
Mhm. How
But
much of an issue is like illegal rock collecting in terms of destroying specimens and pollution and stuff like that?
um, well, it's no one real. It's not about the specimens when it comes to that. It's mostly people trashing the land and then not, they'll leave behind holes from their digging. They destroy the landscape. They'll one thing that you're not allowed to do when you're out collecting is deface a natural rock face.
Mm-hmm.
So if there, even if it's an area that you can collect, say, fluorite, if the fluorite is on a natural rock face, you can't break it off the rock face and make it look ugly.
Mm-hmm.
We have laws to prevent people from just trashing everything and making it look like, a bunch of amateur miners came by and just wrecked it all.
That's very good. I assume we
But
have them as well, but I've like never heard of it. But I'm definitely gonna be more interested in checking it out, see what it is
yeah,
for my country. I assume it's gonna be similar for the whole European Union. And do you know, like, have you done this in Europe or just in Utah or the U.S.?
um, well, a lot of the laws are shared by other nations that have strong presence in the IUGS, which is the international group that does naming, classification, and international policies in regards to mineral resources. But there are certain IUGS guidelines people follow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if that's one of them, but I would not be surprised.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For example, there's several laws on how, how much a country is allowed to trash its countryside and how much pollution it can put out when mining.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there's there's some mining methods that are dirtier and they're fast, efficient. You get lots of ore, but it destroys the environment. Like it'll destroy the ecology and pollute things. So there's international laws to prevent that. But nations all the time try to sneak in that kind of activity. Um, China is notorious for not following those guidelines.
Mm. Yeah, we had some issues here as well with gold mining because I think how do you say Chanura in English? Cyanide? Okay, cyanide, yeah. Um, is, to my understanding, a method of getting gold out of soil.
Right. So there's a few ways. There are a few minerals, or not minerals, elements to use. So you can use mercury to pull gold out of ore. So you'll often have your slopes, like they literally make a hill and put the gold ore on this hill, this slope, and on this slope is mercury just flowing down it. And they put it on that for a few cycles, and it'll pull the gold out of the gold ore and bond it to the mercury, which they can then detach it later through basic heating and
Mm-hmm.
processes like that. But you can use multiple things for that. They use mercury, they use arsenic. Cyanide contains arsenic, so that's probably why. But
So what are like the better ones? Like you mentioned, there's better ways to do it.
so the whole mercury slope thing is actually pretty safe. But the main thing people do is with sulfide mining. Sulfides are like fool's gold and galena, lead ore. And so when people are mining copper, most copper comes from sulfide minerals. And the thing is, you get a lot of sulfuric acid as a byproduct. And the clean way to do it is to gather it up and sell it. A lot of mines will sell their sulfuric acid. But if you're in a hurry, it's easier to just dump it and process more ore and then sell the copper. And a lot of nations are guilty of just dumping their sulfuric acid, which ruins the acidity of groundwater and causes plant life to be unable to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And also, when people don't properly clean up their pits
Mm-hmm.
afterwards. So, in the United States, it's a little tricky uh, to enforce any sort of cleaning up after they're done mining. There, Montana has a open pit mine. Uh, it's one of the only places in the world where you can pay to see toxic waste because the lake there is incredibly disgusting. They
Oh.
just filled it with water, and then when they were done in like here, it's a reservoir. That's the cleanup they did, which isn't cleaning up at all.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
That's
it's
too bad.
incredibly disgusting.
I saw some videos on YouTube talking about using plants to get um, to rehabilitate an area that has been previously a mine, and also like extract the last remnants of a, for example, nickel with poplar tree. How true is that? Because it looks kind of sketchy and fantasy to me, so I can't tell if it's like a legit thing or not.
True. So you can. There are various plants that like certain mineral conditions. I do know there's a plant that they like to use uh, in Utah. So when you're using plants to find ore, it's called a geobotanical survey. Some plants like high copper concentrations. So if you find that plant, you know that underneath it must be a copper deposit of some sort. Others like nickel, like you said, with poplar trees. Um, so they do very much use plants as way to find ore deposits.
Hmm. And how true do you think that is? Like, oh, you destroyed a whole mountain and it's okay. We'll just put poplars everywhere and that's gonna make it better.
No, no, no. We're terrible at cleaning up after ourselves when mining. Even with a good reclamation project, it still does damage, often irreversible damage to the local ecosystem. I mean, it's a nice idea, but the amount of time it would take for plants to completely undo what we do to the environment is very unrealistic. But
Hmm.
it's a neat concept using plants to mine.
So you don't think it's this Elon Musk level of revolutionary technology is gonna fix everything? It's just maybe some people trying to get government funding for sketchy projects?
Oh, it's definitely worth researching, and it could be very important if we were to try and colonize Mars, for example. Instead of running a big mine, we could get metals that we need for a Mars colony using plants to extract it from the ground. So, I mean, you can get small amounts of important metals with plants. It's just not really viable to
Mm-hmm.
do large scale mining operations with just plants currently. But if we genetically modify them, make it more efficient, it might become a great method for getting material.
Yeah, like they were saying as well that they're selecting for like better and better plants to be doing this, and it's like early on stage, but even so, it sounds nice, I think. More than being feasible anytime soon. But then again, I'm like not an expert in the field, so I can't even imagine how correct or wrong it might be. It's just way out of
Yeah.
my depth. Uh,
Well, I've got student vision on the issue, so I might know a bit about it, but I'm still learning.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and I think often like students who are still learning about stuff, like they're more open-minded to talking about these things. Because, like for example, I don't think if I were to talk to a 60-year-old geologist, established, has a lot of paperwork done, research published, and is like pretty good at what they do. Like they're usually not gonna waste time talking about unobtainium and mithril and things like that. Is that they just view it as a waste of time generally. So that's what I liked a lot about
Yeah.
Neil deGrasse Tyson and his, like for example, the Star Talk shows, because like they take fun stuff and talk about it, and there are also YouTubers that do like how correct was this sci-fi film or that sci-fi film, and it makes it a lot more easier and fun for me to understand stuff. And I think you kind of whet the appetite for a lot of people. And Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking with some filmmakers, I think, at some point, about how having certain films be very popular, kind of, you see a correlation, not necessarily a causation, between how many people join a certain field around the time of that movie's release, and like how you get more women or some ethnicity or other join the scientific field or a specific scientific field just because there was some film that came out and was popular. And like, do you have you seen that happen in your field, like maybe Jurassic Park or something like that? Like, is that something that is kind of maybe influenced people to join?
Oh, without doubt. Um, I actually volunteer occasionally at a dinosaur museum, and it's mainly because they're a bunch of paleontologists and they don't have a geologist, and they do have a geological collection in addition to the dinosaurs. So that's usually what I'm helping with. But they've told me that they all those paleontologists they all love Jurassic Park, and it's what got them interested in paleontology. Pretty much every single one of them. It doesn't matter that's inaccurate and impossible and has you know dinosaurs that are more separated from each other than they are separated from us. Um, it doesn't matter if all that's true. It brings attention to the field and glamorizes it, and then people can learn the real truth behind it. They get curious and they look things up, and they're like, "Well, the movie was wrong, but it's super cool."
Yeah, and like you were telling me that the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park are actually from the Cretaceous period or something, if I remember correctly.
Yes, so some of them are from the Cretaceous, and some are from the Jurassic, and some are from even the Pleistocene. I mean, there's such a huge range, and it's called Jurassic Park. I mean, like T Rex. T Rex is a late Cretaceous dinosaur. It was one of the last dinosaurs to evolve before the large dinosaurs were wiped out with the meteor strike. Uh, Fun fact: dinosaurs are not extinct.
Mm-hmm.
They're birds are not just. I mean, they are direct descendants of dinosaurs. They're what dinosaurs the ones that survived the last extinction were small
Mm-hmm.
and became modern birds. So they didn't go extinct. It just most of the dinosaurs, the large dinosaurs, got wiped out. So when people are like, dinosaurs aren't real anymore, and it's like, no, no, they're still here. They're still here. See that bird? It's a dinosaur. I'm just making fun of you.
Where do you draw the line and say it's no longer dinosaur? Also, to my understanding, we evolutionary branch is like the Dinoclusis, something that has like a winged sail on the back, and it had like the skull different from dinosaurs because it didn't have the two holes; it had the one hole. Huh?
Yeah. So,
Synopsis. My husband's like telling me. Couldn't remember the word.
yeah.
Um.
So, that was before the dinosaurs. Our lineage goes before that. When true dinosaurs first emerged, the first mammals emerged. So, our shared ancestor, you have to go back further.
Mhm. Mhm. I
Um,
think that's so cool. Like, no, 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 no. We're not the new kids on the block. You are.
yeah,
Respect,
mammals were
respect
pretty
your
common.
elders.
Even when dinosaurs were dominant in the Cretaceous, mammals were pretty common. There's lots and lots of mammals. My professor, former professor since he retired, he was looking for small mammal teeth. His PhD is on tiny mammals. And when he was looking for tiny mammal teeth, because they lived alongside much larger dinosaurs, that's when he discovered the ceratops, now known as Diabloceratops etoni.
Mhm.
So he had the dinosaur named after him when he was actually there just to find little rodent teeth.
That is so cool. Good for him.
So that's the dinosaur that is named after him, and it's pretty cool looking.
I think there were some estimates somebody made that like we've only discovered like 5% of all life that ever existed because there's so many gelatinous creatures that have left no remnants and probably never gonna find them or something like that.
Yeah, so the situation for fossilization is exceedingly rare. To put into perspective, in history, there were trillions of dinosaurs, trillions and trillions. There were billions of T Rexes. Like, there were more T Rex members of that species throughout history than there has been total number of humans in human history. Like, if you get all the humans that were ever born, there was vastly more T Rexes. Just because of how, like, people don't realize how many dinosaurs there were because fossilization is so rare.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean for crocodiles as well, they've been around for such a long time, and
Yeah.
yeah, we're pretty recent. Like you, Homo sapiens is 200,000 years old, and like hominids, how much? A million years? 2 million
Um,
years?
I think hominids officially start about 250,000 years ago. Not entirely certain on that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my area. But I do know some of the oldest humans or hominids, uh, or actually hominins is what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the earliest hominins was about 100,000 years ago,
Oh,
if I recall.
so recent. We're fresh.
Yeah, yeah, and then you compare that to like a T Rex, which existed for like 15 million years plus, where we barely existed at all.
Imagine where we'll be in like even a couple of thousand years.
Yeah.
It's pretty exciting because they didn't do much with their lives. Like, there's those memes like, oh, some person became famous at the age of 40 or 50. Like, oh, don't feel too bad about yourself. You didn't do much with your life. Maybe you'll bloom later or something like that. And it's like, we're really early bloomers, and like the T Rex didn't do much.
Right.
They didn't take over the world or anything.
I mean, they ruled the world. They were the top carnivore at the time, from what we can tell. But
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
no. So here's the thing: if dinosaurs made use of tools,
Mm-hmm.
we would not be able to tell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if there were raptors using stone tools,
Mm-hmm.
these stones would be indistinguishable by now because it's been such a long time.
Yeah.
Weathering processes would have rounded them out, so anything that would have been an edge previously
Mm-hmm.
would be rounded out. So it's entirely feasible to believe that some species of dinosaur, or even uh, fish or mammal at the time, some of them may have been able to use tools.
That sounds really exciting. I think I saw some YouTube video was saying like, let's say we die of climate change, all of us, and then add even half the time between us and the dinosaurs, and it'd just be a thin layer of polymers. That will be all that's left of our legacy. And there'll be
Exactly.
like future geologists or paleontologists or anthropologists, whatever. They will look at that and think, what happened here? Why are so many polymers?
Right? But for all they know, it could be just genetic drift material because there's loose polymers everywhere. I mean, how would they know what it belongs to?
Yeah, that was a bit confusing for me as well, but I was like, okay, like what would be left? I think that was kind of what they were trying to get at. Because even the plate tectonics would move around, so you wouldn't have anything preserved in the South Pole or anything. Like, where's the South Pole heading towards at the moment? Like, what's the
Uh,
direction of 2 centimeters per year in which it's going?
yeah. So the South Pole is, the continent Antarctica, and Antarctica is, if I recall, drifting to the southwest currently, away from uh, Africa, and but more importantly, there you can actually see a modern example where by Egypt, where the continent is pulling itself apart, and the continental plate of Africa is drifting away from the Eurasian plate. There's areas where you can see subsidence
Mm-hmm.
from the land being pulled thinner.
Yeah, there's like a huge cavus. Kind of looks like the one in the Grand Canyon, but like the formation is different.
Yeah, that's Rift Valley, the Great Rift Valley. It's pretty cool,
Yeah, I think
and
it's
it's,
really exciting as well.
yeah, and that's not formed because it's literally tearing apart right there. That formed because the land is being stretched,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like if you were to just stretch some dough,
Yeah.
eventually the dough would break in a few areas, and that's what's happening. Is it's getting stretched thin, and that tension release is causing it to rupture.
Yeah, I think it's really awesome. It's kind of bad luck, I think. It's kind of weird that you're like, oh, my country is breaking apart in two.
Right. I hope you can understand me just fine. I mean, I still have a teeny bit of rasp, so I'm
Yeah, it's more of like the cutoff. I think maybe like, sometimes interference, but for the most part, I understand what you're saying.
that's good. That's good. Probably should check sooner.
Maybe for another stream, I would love to have you again talk about this stuff, so maybe you'll have better luck next time.
Oh yeah.
Uh, on our list, we also wanted to talk about like what would be for the Ghibli Town Museum, like what interesting things can we add. I'm happy I have Opal in the game and vanilla, but I was just thinking, what exciting things could I add? Um, that would be
Right.
also found in Japan because Ghibli town is kind of Japanese themed, so it would be like volcanic rocks.
Right. So there's a lot of things that we could add for this. Just a quick rundown. Japan is terrible in general for mining. Uh, they don't really do a lot of mining there because the deposits are often small and they're often poor materials. That doesn't mean there isn't really cool minerals there. There's lots of cool stuff for collectors. It's just not really well known for a lot of specific ore deposits.
Yeah, kind of Africa and Australia are the ones that I always hear in the news.
Right. I mean, like, for example, Japan has very large deposits of limestone, which you can use to make cement. So that that's something they've been doing for centuries is making cement out of limestone, even in medieval uh, dynastic times for China or China Japan. Sorry. Um, anyway, so in the anime Doctor Stone, they
Mhm.
have they show a certain kind of ore deposit called a skarn. What a skarn is when limestone has an intrusive body of igneous material intrude on it. Like you'll have hydrothermal fluids will just come into the limestone and it'll dissolve the limestone and deposit the heavy metals and minerals that were in the fluid.
Mhm.
So a lot of the minerals that you find in Japan are related to skarn deposits because it's Japan is largely sedimentary rock. Uh,
Really? I thought it
yeah,
was like volcanic, cause volcanoes and stuff. How
right.
how did how did the islands form?
Good question.
Cause like for example, the Carpathian Mountains in Romania have formed through what is it called when two plate tectonics hit each other and they like the crust goes up. What was the word?
That's a convergent
Co-
boundary.
okay, convergent boundary. Um, well, like, even though we do have volcanoes, sort of in Romania, they're just mud volcanoes. Like no lava comes out of them.
Yeah,
I don't think we ever had. We do have some volcanic lakes. So I think we did have some volcanoes and maybe were active at some point, but like
yeah.
not anymore.
Uh,
So Rocky Mountains as well, I because they're huge, they have to be through tectonic movement, right? They're not volcanic.
um, so yes, the Rocky Mountains in the United States, that mountain range is indeed from a convergent boundary
Mhm.
between two continental plates.
Mhm.
It's known as a shear boundary. Um, the one moment. Anyway, sorry.
No
Um,
problem. Welcome back.
so you end up with these. I need to clear my throat. Wow, it sounds so much better. So you end up with these folded mountain ranges where things that were once horizontal are now vertical. Layers that were horizontal become vertical, or
Mhm.
sometimes even completely do a 180-degree flip so that they're upside down. They got all sorts of twisted, and that's because of the continental plates coming together and one of them being more dense than the other.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
less dense one goes up, and the denser one goes under,
Mm-hmm.
and the one that's going up gets folded in the process.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think Japan formed? Like with both methods, or just because I don't see volcanoes being that big to make islands so
So
big.
let's see what. I'm just doing a quick little check here. Okay. Okay, so what Japan is, Japan was originally part of the Eurasian continent.
Oh,
Uh, yeah, you can actually see where it used to be connected, but the plate broke
huh.
away from it.
But it's on the
Um,
other side. How did it get? You said Eurasian. Sorry, I just
you're
heard
fine.
part of it, and I was thinking, how the heck did it get on the other side of the world? So okay, so it detached from China, I assume.
Yeah, so the plate that it's on um, is being subducted, uh, according to this, pulling Japan eastward and opening the Sea of Japan.
Mhm.
Um, and that's why it's largely sedimentary rock, because it used to be part of the coastline for Eurasian continent, and where along coastlines is where a lot of sedimentary rock forms because of the large amount of
And that's why they
uh,
have all of that
fluid movement.
limestone, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Is
So they have lots of limestone.
all of that
Uh,
calcium is from shells of sea creatures, or what? Where is it from?
so yeah, limestone is made by um, millions and millions of years ago of all the shell life, as you were saying, breaking down and cementing together over time. So limestone is almost exclusively organic. Some of it can technically form without uh, having shells or any organic material, but that's very rare conditions.
That is so cool to me if it was organic life, because like petrol used to be well, kind of sea creatures. They say it's dinosaur juice, but it's like there weren't enough dinosaurs to make that, to my understanding. And like all of the coal used to be trees. Yeah, like when we're not gonna have coal ever again, to my understanding, because mushrooms evolved, so we're never gonna get coal deposits like ever, and it's just so,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, so the conditions for coal definitely aren't something we have really much in the way of anymore. Plant life used to just die and fall, and
Mhm.
then layers and layers would form, and then it would start to compress. But
Does coal has
the
any like research value? Like you can look at it and go, oh, this is how plants evolved or something.
to some extent,
So are we? Did
there
we just burn a lot of research material?
technically anything can be used for research. The
Mhm.
question is whether it's actually useful or worth your time.
Mhm. And how
Uh,
how how do you determine that? Ask aliens.
well,
I don't know.
they do find fossils in coal pits. Like they'll find plant fossils, they'll find animal fossils. There's all kinds of fossils that get discovered when coal mining. So you could argue, hey, look, coal mining is useful and something we should do because we occasionally get nice fossils from it. And it's like, no, no, no. I mean, really, it's still not great to burn coal. Just because you're finding some things doesn't justify it.
I was not thinking that at all. Like, who even does make that argument as like mustache twirling evil person? I was just thinking
Yeah,
that, oh no, we're destroying the stuff we could study.
Yeah, well, stuff gets destroyed all the time like that. Yeah,
Yeah, I
or you know,
mean, nature is great at doing it, but like, I would be really sad if like something important got destroyed, especially
it
by
does
humans.
get
I'll be
destroyed.
doubly upset. If like nature didn't do anything in this case. It was us. We could have not done that.
Yeah, so there's like a lot of vertebrae poaching in the United States. It's illegal for non-scientists to collect vertebrate fossils in the United States.
Good.
So, like fish fossils and stuff, because they are invaluable for research. You're only allowed to collect invertebrate unless it's private land. If
Hmm.
it's private land, you can collect fish fossils here. So there's a lot of operations where you can go pay to collect fish fossils, for example. But normally you're not allowed to collect them.
Which
People do it
states?
anyway.
Yeah. Which states can you do that in? Because I don't remember ever seeing that in Michigan.
Well, here in Utah, we've got a few places where you can pay to collect fish fossils.
How far in? Well, I guess if you can convert miles to kilometers for me, I appreciate it. How
Yeah.
far is Utah from Michigan in kilometers?
Let me think. Um,
It's like for you guys, everything's so freaking far. It's annoying.
yeah. Um, you know, it's according to this, it's 2,759 kilometers.
Sorry, I didn't hear it. 2000 and
2,759.
2759. Hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty far.
Yeah, I mean, like it's from Romania to Germany, Andre. Yeah, so it's from Romania to Germany. And or for those of you that don't know or care where Romania is like from Romania to Spain. No, it's less. Yeah, okay. I'm looking at my husband because I don't drive and I don't really check these things out. Like I don't have the mindset for thinking about distances that well. So like for a lot of things, I have to uh, Google stuff. He just knows because he's traveled more than me and is a driver. And it's kind of funny because our roads are so bad. Romania seems bigger than it is. It's only 1,000 kilometers from one side to the other, but it takes you 2 days.
Yeah, that's that's unfortunate because 2 days of driving down the interstate is how long it takes me to get to Florida.
Yeah, it's way farther. Yeah, we don't. Yeah, we don't have the German autobahn or even the Michigan like infrastructure. And but we do have the same potholes. Like when we lived in Michigan, it was like, oh, it feels like home. It was like no 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 on all the potholes.
I got that.
How are
And
the
yes,
roads in Utah?
how the roads. Well, they're actually fairly well maintained because uh, we get a lot of stimulus packages specifically for road maintenance. I will say when they use cement, it's so much more annoying because the cement is like all these squares, and every time you get on a new square, it's a thump, a thump,
Oh
a thump.
yeah, I think we have some roads like that still. Like Nazis built them for getting their tanks to Russia or something, and
Yeah,
we have them left over.
cement is stronger than asphalt. If you drive a tank on an asphalt road,
Yeah, yeah,
it'll
yeah.
tear up the road. So
Yeah, I think those are some of our oldest roads. Cause like Romania is a second world country and it's kind of pretty underdeveloped in many ways. Like, still, I think we have half the country uses outhouses. Which I've saw in the U.S. Like you guys have peasants, farmers that like live in the woods and have outhouses. Cause we went exploring around the area where we were. We tried to go to an Amish village, and their sign was completely shot with holes from guns. And we're like, oh, they're not that peaceful as advertised. We'll go home. But we did have a look around, and we're like, not so different, you and I. We also have outhouses.
Yeah, yeah.
Fun experience. I
It
think,
depends where you are. So
yeah, I think Bill Clinton went on TV to brag about how like he's the last president to have used an outhouse. It was like, should you really be bragging? Like, I think he was trying to say like, oh look how far we've come, yay!
right, that makes sense.
Yeah, fun
Oh,
times. Next on our list to discuss was the pop culture fantasy minerals like vibranium and mithril and all of that. Like, um, tell us about them.
for sure. As I know we were talking earlier, and we were, considering if vibranium was came from a real mineral, and what the mineral structure might have. And we came up with, I came up with this, and it's my guess. And the reason I made that formula is because quartz has the property of the triboluminescence, as we mentioned earlier.
I think
I
that's so
figure if,
cool.
yeah, if I figure if you want a mineral that can convert um, kinetic energy into energy, something quartz-like would be smart. So
Mm-hmm.
the formula is a silicate carbonate mixture because carbon is forms extremely strong bonds in chemistry. And what would make it rare, the mineral, is if it had a bit of gold in the structure. So that's how we came up with that fantasy formula for the mineral vibranium comes from. I don't know what we call that. Maybe vibravite. I don't know.
Yeah, because you said, oops, sorry, I hit my microphone. I'm so sorry for those of you using headphones. Um, Because you were saying that this mineral that you wrote the formula for here in the chat, for those of you who are curious to see it, um, it could not form on Earth because the gravity is too low.
Right. The gravity you would need more pressure than we get in our minerals formation. You would need a really high pressure environment than with active water flow to make something like that.
Active water
So
flow, is that like an ocean?
groundwater, or rather, hy- hydrous fluids. So even magma has water in it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so when a geologist says a hydrothermal fluid, that doesn't necessarily mean magma, but it also doesn't necessarily mean like a hot spring.
Mm-hmm.
Hydrothermal is a kind of catchphrase for any hydrous fluid.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was saying that something like that would be very hard to form on Earth because it would take multiple stages of mineral growth. When minerals are in a melt,
Mm-hmm.
as geologists call it, when it's just liquid, it hasn't turned solid yet. The often multiple minerals will form in succession as it cools or the pressure is released.
Mm-hmm.
There are sweet spots in which minerals will form. So, like once the pressure lowers to a certain point, this mineral will precipitate out of the melt. And when it
Precip-
lowers more, this mineral precipitates out.
so precipitates, for those listening and maybe don't know, because like they use a different word in their own language. For Romania is the same. What does it mean? I mean, it leaks out, or can you explain better for us?
Yeah, so um, something is said to be precipitating when it's removed from a mixture. Or here's an example: if you have salt water and the salt is removed from the water, it is said to have precipitated out the water.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just the process of removing a suspended load from the fluid that contains the load.
Hmm. And that happens with time. Is like, can you accelerate the process?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you had access to that melt and you dug a hole and let pressure out, that would definitely accelerate it.
Hmm.
But you would also get really small crystals because crystal size has to do with how slowly things cool. If something slows very cool, or cools very slowly, you get large crystals, and if it cools
Hmm.
quickly, you get small ones. And if it cools quickly enough, sometimes you won't even have crystals; you'll just have a glass.
Like for water, for example, if you want to get that really nice transparent ice, you kind of have to for it to cool quickly, slowly. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, and then that is an example. An example of so obsidian. Obsidian forms from volcanoes when the either it forms in the air because as a volcanic bomb, because as it's flying through the air, that will cool it extremely quickly, or it happens when the lava touches water and the water cools it quickly enough. Uh, Obsidian is if you have the same material that made the obsidian and managed to cool it slower, you would get a different kind of rock.
What rock would you get?
Um, what is it called? Trying to remember the name. Um, so the one that comes the less uh, glassy version. I don't remember the name, but you get other rocks like tuff.
Hmm.
Um, Tuff is a kind of devitrified volcanic glass. Um,
How's it spelled? Because I imagine it's not Tuff.
it is Tuff. That's how you
Ah,
spell
so like
it. It
when you say that something is tough, it's like you're saying it's that rock. It's like
well,
sandstone.
normally that's how you spell tough when people are talking about something being tough.
Hmm.
The rock is spelled like this.
Ah.
Uh, yes. So tough forms from volcanic ash as the volcanic ash falls to the ground, and and it varies in composition, but it can be somewhat glassy like obsidian.
Interesting. Because, I don't know if you're too familiar with George R. R. Martin's work. For those of you that don't know, he's the guy with the Game of Thrones show. But he's very passionate about rocks. He talks about gemstones a lot in his stories, and he has one character that is named Tough, and he has like a whole book series, The Voyages of Tough, or something like that. So it's just something I remember, and for him, names are very important, symbolism and things like that. So it's really, I just thought that it wasn't a very interesting name he gave his character, but now that you were talking about it being a mineral, it definitely made me think, oh, George, he did something there. I'll have to see what he did.
Yeah, and tough is a rock, not a mineral.
What's the difference? Sorry, because I keep using them wrong, I see, and I want
You're
to
fine.
learn.
A rock is what is known as a so what qualifies a rock is it has to be one or more minerals. Sometimes you have rocks that are just one mineral, but what makes it a rock is that if it forms structure building, basically if it can form geologic structures. So like a boulder or just what you're walking on. It's a little hard to describe what a geologic structure is, but we consider like a mountain a structure.
Mm-hmm.
Anticlines, synclines, there's all sorts of things that are considered structures for geologists.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's structure forming, it's considered a rock. And if it's one or more minerals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes it's made out of just one mineral, like limestone.
Mm-hmm.
Limestone is made out of calcite, the mineral calcite.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all there is to it, really. So it's one of those examples where it's just one mineral.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have things like sandstone,
Mm-hmm.
which if you have an Arcos sandstone, that means it's made out of almost only it's almost exclusively sand grains that are made out of quartz. So, but it's considered a rock despite being made out of mostly quartz. It's not just called quartz.
Interesting. Yeah. And so for me, it's very fun to learn about these things because also when I go out and see stuff, understanding what I'm looking at definitely makes me appreciate it more, sort of,
Yeah,
if
and
you
then
get what I'm saying.
I do get that, and that's why I'm going to do what I'm doing with my YouTube channel because it's good. There's so much stuff to learn,
Mm-hmm.
and some of it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And my goal is just to simplify that so that people who can't afford or don't have time to go to college to learn these kinds of things can still learn and still enjoy that knowledge.
What is an example of something that, doesn't make sense or is hard to understand and you would need like a proper education to get it?
Right. Let me think. I have to get my head out of my own perspective of what makes sense to me as a geologist and what would not make sense to everyone
I
else.
can like give examples from what I
Yeah,
teach because like for example I teach Japanese and teaching a language involves like learning grammar and stuff like that, and if
yeah,
you have a Eurocentric view of language, like there will be
yeah,
certain things that are very weird in Japanese and you don't understand, and a frequent example that I give is that they only have two tenses. You have past and non-past, and like the present and future are combined when you conjugate a verb. Like they still have an understanding of past, present, and future. It's just that when they're conjugating their verbs, they only have past and non-past. And of course, there are modes and um, negations and other things like that. That sometimes people get confused with tenses, but they're not tenses. So to me, when I first found out that like Japanese only has two tenses, I was like, what? How? And another confusing thing is that they don't have plurals for their nouns. So egg and eggs is tamago. It's the same thing.
yeah. Uh, okay, here's a good example of something that people think they understand, but they don't understand. Faults, like a
Mm-hmm.
fault line.
Yeah.
Everyone knows about the big fault lines that cause earthquakes,
Mm-hmm.
but to a geologist, any sort of fracture that causes displacement is a fault. So it could be a few millimeters big, or or it could be miles long. And then you have faults coming off of the main fault.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people don't realize that sometimes you can have just a single rock that shows a fault line if the rock has a clear displacement of the
Mm-hmm.
layers. So that's one thing people don't realize is when we're talking about faults, they're not always big earthquake causing disaster things.
Mm-hmm.
They're sometimes much smaller.
And any other examples? Like,
Sure. Um, So, like the notion that mountains are thrust upwards. Not all mountains are because of upward movement. The Wasatch Mountains here in Utah are what's called it's a normal fault. And what that means is while it looks like the mountains are growing, it's actually just the valley sinking. So,
Ah, okay, because I was really confused. Like, how are not mountains going up?
yeah, so it gives you the appearance of them rising, but it's really just the valley sinking. Because
So
this part
how
of,
are they technically still mountains? Because now you're challenging my definition of a mountain.
right? There is no specific criteria of what makes a mountain a mountain. Geologically speaking, a mountain is an anticline. Synclines and anticlines are how we view things.
Mhm.
A syncline is a dip in the terrain, and an anticline is a rise in the terrain. So a little hill is an anticline just like a mountain is.
Mhm.
Geologically speaking, mountains are not real. They're just something we common folk call a big hill.
Mhm.
There's no criteria that says this is now a mountain instead of a hill, and this is now a hill instead of a bump.
Now you're validating a Hungarian friend of mine's statement that Hungary has a mountain.
Right? Like technically you don't. It's an anticline.
Because, like, I was talking to her, because for those that don't know, Hungary is especially flat. Like, it is flat. And they have a hill that is, I think their tallest hill is 400 meters. And we have a hill that used to be a mountain in the Dobroja area. It's a very old mountain, so it got eroded so much it is now a 600-meter hill, and we call it a hill because we have mountains, the Carpathian Mountains, which, which are 2.5 kilometers high. So their mountain isn't even as tall as our tallest hill. So it was like funny for me when I heard her say that. It was like, but now who calls it a mountain? My husband says that some people call those mountains, and I'm like,
Right.
like really, like the definitions. It's interesting, yeah, for sure. I would consider anything about above 1.5 kilometers, just because of my personal experience and the geography of my country. I would say anything over 1.5 kilometers, you can start to call it a mountain. And I'm sure
Yes.
the people that live in Nepal are amused by me.
So what I would qualify as mountain if I had to come up with a boundary is if an anticline involves if anticline contains Platonic rock.
Platonic
So
rock.
yeah, Platonic rocks are igneous rocks that solidified from a melt at great depths. So they are usually contain large rock crystals because they cooled slowly. So Platonic rock is rock that's like granite and the grainy stuff, or say pegmatite is also Platonic rock. Anyway, so the core of the continents, all the core rock in the continents is Platonic rock, and a large body of that type is called a pluton.
Hmm.
And so, if I were to make a qualifier for a mountain, I would require it to have Platonic rock in its structure. If it didn't, I would not call it a mountain.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's just how I would do it.
Hmm. I'll definitely take your definition over my
Yeah,
random 1.5 kilometers just based on my feelings about it.
right? Do you feel small or big?
Yeah, yeah. Compared to the mountains that I have, I remember um, seeing for the first time Mont Blanc in Switzerland. And I was just peeking over the border, and I could see the French Alps, and I could see Mont Blanc, and it was just so big compared to anything I have in Romania, and I was like, oh, that's a serious mountain. Like that's a real mountain. What we have is so tiny.
right?
And it makes such a big impact seeing it in person rather than seeing it on National Geographic. Because I've seen the Himalayas plenty of times on Nat Geo, and I was like, yeah, it's impressive, it's big, it's like, but once you're there in person, it's like makes it a lot more. I don't know. The feeling is different for sure.
Right. The mountain range I have here, I live right next to it. It's called the Wasatch Range.
Mhm.
Its elevation is up to 3,600 meters. So they're
Mhm.
pretty tall,
Yeah.
3.6 kilometers high.
Mhm.
So when people are like, I've seen mountains, and they come to the state, they're like, nope, now I've seen mountains.
Yeah, because so much of the U.S. is flat, so flat.
Yeah,
I was surprised because I was looking at the U.S. map, and I'm like, my husband was about to have maybe some free time. I was like, oh, I want to go see some mountains here in the U.S. And I was like, but where's the closest one? And like the closest one was 800 kilometers in Virginia or something like that. And I was like, I'm not driving 800 kilometers to see some mediocre mountains. They're not even that tall. And the Rockies were too far. So we were like, well, another time.
right.
Disappointment. You know, like I really wanted to see the sequoias and the Rocky Mountains, and we just never got around to it. Like, feel bad about it, but maybe who knows?
Maybe in the future. And if you have the urge to come by, I'm happy to be a tour guide.
Oh, thank you. Well, if you ever want to visit Romania, you know where to find me.
I
Your
mean, it
dog.
sounds really interesting. I imagine rock hunting in Romania would be a blast.
I don't know, like, from what I understand, we have diversity of rocks because we have really old mountains and, like, new mountains. But to my understanding, there's nothing like particularly special about what we have. But then again, it's been other Europeans that I had the conversation with, so I don't know like how that impacts the opinions of people. I mean, you can
Yeah,
definitely Google it and see if it's worth paying $1,000 for a plane ticket to Romania.
right.
But yeah, the
um,
landscape is very beautiful. The food is great. And take it from someone who's been to well, several European countries and US and Japan. Like, I think I know what I'm talking about.
right. No, I believe you. I definitely believe that. So that's there's a lot of negatives to where I live, but the geology isn't one of them.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm. Like that's one of the things I knew about Utah. It has a flat lakes of salt and awesome dinosaur rock finding stuff. So
yes,
it's too bad we didn't get to talk more about fantasy minerals. Maybe in another stream. It's already 10, so Um, thank you so much for joining us again. Um,
yeah,
it was Will from Terra Firma. He has a YouTube channel, so if you're interested in learning more and hearing more about what he talked with me today, you can go visit his channel. And why won't it let me scroll? There we go. So I can put the link again. Come on, copy paste. My window is bugging out. Can you put your link to your YouTube channel again,
HM.
please?
Yeah, I can do
It's
that.
glitching out for me. Today is full of uh, issues, technical issues.
Yeah, and
Yeah, and I will also pin a comment with his YouTube channel so you guys can easily find it. Thank you again so much for coming. Any last words?
just with the channel, I've only got rock counting videos currently. But I will start posting the educational stuff soon.
Very
Uh,
excited.
so that'll be nice. I suppose this is how I link it. You can tell me if this link's good.
I'm waiting for it to appear.
I put it in the Discord chat
Ah, okay.
just to make sure it works first.
There we go. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it. Well, we're really excited to add a museum to Ghibli Town. I'm still talking with decoders of if we can do that. There's not a support mod for it currently, but who knows, maybe the community will add one at some point. So we're really excited about that. Here was just another little beach that's gonna connect other maps, and I love adding locations to put like all kinds of secrets and things like that, and slowly we're building up all the stuff on the maps. Super excited to be having this mod. Really looking forward to launching it. So yeah, thank you all for all of your support, for your kind words, the interest you've shown in the mod. And if anybody else wants to join the live stream and talk about sciencey stuff with me and stuff that's with Stardew Valley, I look forward to having you on. Thank you, Will, so much for joining, and take care, everyone. Bye bye.